Hello, everybody. Good morning on this fireside chat and with full cast. For those of you who may be new, we are essentially a platform for sales operations. And as Anthony once put it very eloquently, better than us, we are a quota rep and territory management platform. I'm really excited to have Anthony Enrico here as the VP of Worldwide Sales Operations at Email Age, which is now part of LexisNexis. Um, Anthony and I met sometime last year, and we've been, connected and been talking about everything around sales operations. And I think it'll be great if you can just walk us through your background and how you got into sales operations and your journey so far. And then I would really love to sort of dig into learning more about your learnings and experience on scaling ops.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me. Excited to be here and to talk about the story. My background, as I think a lot of people who end up in sales operations, is pretty diverse. Always on the go-to-market side of a company, of a business, but pretty diverse. I spent some time in marketing. I spent some time in product training, so customer-facing training. Did sales. And then when I started with Emailage, I came in to lead the customer success team. So we had a global customer success team. Emailage was in market, every region around the world. So that's where I spent a lot of my time at Emailage. And we had midway through my time at Emailage, we had some change in leadership, and we had a new chief revenue officer, and on his first day I met him, he said, "Hey, who runs sales ops around here?" And and he said, "Well, we don't have sales ops." And he goes, "Well, you're going to be sales ops." So that's kind of the genesis of how I got into the business function.
So like, why did he pick on you for ops? I mean, it's generally that's a very rare path. Like, it's suddenly from customer success into ops, because you will normally see a left brain sales guy who likes process, and he'll be tasked. Okay, you were doing some ops anyways. Why did you run with ops? Like, what triggered that?
Yeah, well, I think I am more left brain, and I think that's an important aspect of somebody who wants to be in ops. And it's really how I ran my part of the business. So how I ran customer success was very analytical, very structured, leverage technology to scale our effectiveness as a team. So it was a very sales operational approach to managing customer success. And in our organization at the time, we also owned the revenue of the existing accounts. So we were responsible for upsells, renewals, cross sells. So a lot of the components of standard sales operations was relevant to my business unit. And I think that analytical approach that I took to it, that very structured approach I took to it, was really conducive for a role in sales operations as a whole, and then looking at the business holistically.
Okay. So when you when you started, you're not thinking of this as sales ops. You were doing what came to you naturally, which is like, okay, I need to measure, I need to have a process for tracking my renewals and all those things. So when you did pick up sales ops, and you had no background in ops, what was your thinking? Like, how did you think about your role, right? Like, or what am I supposed to do here?
Well, first of all, it was pretty overwhelming. It was a lot to learn. We didn't even have the business function in the company, so there wasn't really a concept of sales ops at Emailage, and we had to build it from scratch. So it was a lot of research. It was a lot of learning, and then just leveraging some of the transferable skills myself and the team that I put together had, and just making sure that we were building the right things that we needed for the right time. But it was overwhelming because there was so much to do. But a lot of the stuff that we built, we were just kind of doing things like you said, like, oh, we need territories. All right, well, Anthony's good at that, so let's just let him divide everything. Oh, we need to set, proper quotas and proper targets for the team. Well, Anthony's analytical, so maybe he can handle that. So you just put it together. A lot of the sales operations responsibilities, I kind of just would do them because I think at the time I was the person who had the skills to make it happen. So that's why it made sense when we were putting together this department to, it was a natural fit for me, and I was excited to focus even more on it.
So how big was the sales team when you started the ops function over there?
Well, the sales team was a smaller team. We had maybe 10 dedicated sales reps around the world. We had maybe 10 customer success managers around the world. So it was relatively small, but the idea at that time was we needed to scale. So we needed to grow the sales team. We needed to take advantage of our position in the market. We needed to take advantage of the growth that we had experienced and make sure that we invested in that growth. So although the team at the time was a relatively smaller team, we knew that we were going to be ramping up to a much bigger team. So, and then that turned into an overall sales, customer success, SDR team of around 80 people.
80 people. Mm-hmm. And so you started organically, like bringing some structure, process, and thinking about it from a process perspective. You start building it up. What were the kind of capabilities that you thought you needed to have in the beginning? And or actually, did you think of them in terms of capabilities, or it was more like ad hoc? Okay, this is what needs to be done. Like you said, okay, we need territories, we'll do territories. Do we need quotas? We need quotas. Or did you start thinking in terms of, okay, our growth plan is, we're 10 right now. We are aspiring to have a growth path to say doubling or tripling a sales team, and take a more intentional approach of saying this is how I'm going to build a roadmap for sales ops here.
Once we built the department, once we built the team, it became very intentional. Okay. And I'll credit our CRO for always saying, there's a few levers that you have when you're shaping a business. You have structure, who reports to who, process, what are those people supposed to do, people, who are you hiring, tools, what's the technology and data that you might be using to do your job, and incentives. So in sales, often that's the synonymous with the commission plan. So we actually took a very intentional, holistic approach across those functions, really right from the beginning. And as I mentioned, it was overwhelming. There was a lot to do. It wasn't very easy at that time. So I would say probably our biggest focus though was getting structure and process right. We spent a lot of time on, how should the sales teams be designed? What's the best way to support our customers and find new customers? What's the best, org structure for what we're trying to accomplish and what we're trying to do? We spent a lot of time on that. And what's the process? How do you engage with customers? How do we create awareness? And then how do we nurture and take care of the customers that we already have? All of those, mapping all of those components it became critical. So those two pieces were where we really focused next. And then of course that once we had that part, then it was, well, how do we accelerate this? What technology can we do to accelerate what technology can we leverage to accelerate the process? What incentives can we leverage to maximize the org structure we created? And then let's find the right people for the right jobs.
Yeah. So you went in order of process, technology, and people in terms of, let's define the process that we need. Let's figure out the technology that we need, and then the people. Did you have to make a case for investment in sales ops, or because your CRO was kind of the sponsor champion for sales ops that made it easier?
Well, the initial concept, I think we had some headwind. So to say, okay, somebody should be on sales ops. But then the next question is, well, how big of a team do you need? And that's where I needed to really create the business case. And really where we focused was how can we maximize seller time, customer success time, sales management time. As the more time they can spend prospecting, nurturing customers, the better it's going to be for the company and the better it's going to be for our customers and our product. So a big part of it was, how much does the time of a salesperson really cost? If they're spending hours, manually updating things in a CRM, if they're spending hours doing their own research, looking for potential prospects, if they're spending hours in conflict with other salespeople about who should have what opportunity, all of that time adds up. It adds up really quickly, and it really hinders your ability to scale and get to the goals that you're going to want to set for yourself.
So was there a method that way you went around building a business case, or it is more about you tracking all these elements, like where are we spending time that we potentially could operate, and putting a dollar amount of that and making a case? Like how did you make the business case for the investment in ops?
Yeah, it was tracking time. So if you take your salesperson, and then take how much time they spend on doing XYZ activities, how much are you spending on that particular salesperson, and then what's the opportunity cost if they were to spend more time in the field with customers. So we came up with a methodology that seemed to make sense with our finance team, our sales team, our leadership team, to be able to calculate that. And that was the main driver of saying, okay, well, what are all the activities that we can take off of sales managers and salespeople's plates? And then the next piece of that was, how can we identify areas to accelerate growth? So that was, that's a little bit less tangible, I would say.
Yeah.
But definitely a benefit too. So saying, hey, we can identify who the top reps are, top performing territories, top performing lead sources, and then we can guide investment into our top performing channels. And that's something that came from our sales ops team too.
So as you were starting to build this function, you built a ROI structure for why we should invest in sales ops, right? Was sales ops, and you mentioned two stakeholders, the finance team and the sales team itself, right? Were you seen as a partner or as an order taker from these two organizations?
I would say our orientation was a little bit more towards sales. We're a partner of sales, and that was something that I always instilled in my team. I explained it as, the salespeople and the CSM, they're the athletes on the field. That's them, and then the coaches are the sales managers, and they're on the field. If you think of like a football game or something, we are here to make sure that every single other aspect of that game runs smoothly and they have everything they need to perform well. So if it's equipment, if it's technology, if it's scheduling, practice areas, whatever, we're here to take things off their plate. So we were a huge partner of sales, an advocate for sales. So, we also operated a deal desk. So we operated that function for the company too. So we were always an advocate for sales to get deals approved by finance, by legal, by whoever. And we empowered sales to get things approved that they needed for their customers.
Okay. So you were essentially you were able to, as a leader for sales operations, you were able to sort of see yourself as almost a peer for a senior for your sales leadership, and have your team support them. So like you're not just waiting for taking orders and saying, I'm going to give you the report, versus leading with the point of view. The thing that I'm trying to get, like what I've seen a lot of sales operations teams do, and I want to understand if that was how you operated, or you can get your thoughts on it is, a lot of them feel our job starts and ends as long as we can do pipeline reporting and give the reports to the managers of what they need, and then it's their job to drive the sales people that they have on the team. Was that the approach, or it was more about, hey, we have a point of view, these are all the things that you should do, and these are all the things that your teams you're not doing today but perhaps will help? So were you leading with a point of view, or were you just a funnel of giving information, like, here's a report, here's what you need to do?
No, we were leading and very proactive. We weren't waiting. Normally, we probably gave our sales managers maybe too many reports, but we were consistently looking for areas of opportunity and trying to be their eyes and ears to see things that maybe they weren't seeing. So that's something that we took really seriously. We wanted to get them the information they needed to be successful. And also for the leadership team, we were there as a guide for where we should invest next.
Okay.
Should we hire more salespeople? Do we have more capacity in the territories that we have? Should we hire more CSMs? Do we need more revenue out of the existing book? We were there really to help guide that, and partnering with marketing too. So being able to map out, hey, what are the most successful campaigns you've done, and how can we replicate those? So that we definitely a partner, proactive, and leading with data, and having an opinion of strategy too. So coming to the table with an opinion of, this is where I think we should be investing next.
Okay. So looking back now at the end of the email age journey, were there things that you would have done differently?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think in regards to this topic, we could have really benefited from having a sales ops function earlier in the stage of the company. I think we waited maybe too long, and it was tough to scale. It was tough to hire more people. It was tough to bring more people on. It was tough to open up new regions without having a team dedicated to structuring that well. And it's just a lot of work. It's a lot of work. If for a sales manager to effectively manage their entire team while also trying to build all the processes and functions and manage the tools, it's too much. So I would have invested earlier in sales ops. I think that was my biggest learning.
Okay. What was your lens for hiring people? So, like, you talked about the process, the technology pieces, obviously, you're the stunting. But what is the lens for hiring people into ops roles? Were they internal hires, or were people that you brought in with ops experience to augment?
So I was pretty fortunate, I would say. I was able to fill my team entirely internally. And I would say, when you're starting, I would look internally if you can. If you have the right people, I would look internally, because the biggest challenge is going to be understanding how your company operates and being able to provide meaningful recommendations. And it would just be, for the pace that we had to move, it would have been tough to have somebody come up to speed quickly enough. So if you have the right people, I'd look internally. We alluded to this earlier, but you want people who are analytical, who are inquisitive. It's a lot of data management. It's a lot of mapping out structures and processes, and it's a lot of spreadsheets. It's a lot of tools and technology. So you have to have people who are very comfortable with data. And I would also say it would be important to have some people who are at least exposed to sales. We actually had somebody who was a sales rep in a previous role who joined the team, and that was very helpful, because they just bring a level of perspective that makes your team more effective. Okay. And everybody on the team had some exposure, whether they were in a supporting role on sales or did sales themselves or customer success. everybody in the team had some level of experience being on the front line.
Oh, frontline. So now you go from there to LexisNexis, and what's the degree of scale difference between Email Age to LexisNexis now?
Oh, it's quite bigger. it's a much bigger organization, much more complex. Multitude of product lines, very specific territories, very specific sales roles and functions. They have very complex customers to manage as well, with a very complex product suite that they work with. So the complexity just is not even comparable. Email is just mostly 1-2 products, a sales team that you can start to, you know who everyone is. You've met them all. When you get to a company like LexisNexis, you have an army of a sales force. So some of the things that we were doing and some of the ways we were operating just would not operate the same way at LexisNexis.
So what would be those things that you would say, you know what, these are things that will not scale with us into LexisNexis world, and these are the things that you're going to either start anew or overinvest now that you're part of LexisNexis?
Yeah, I think one big one is building territories. You can visualize it when you have less than 100 or so, and if you map that around the world, you can visualize it. You can really get a sense of where things are. When you're 10 times the size of that, 20 times the size of that, that's when you really need some help with technology and some real structure, real process. Everything needs to be fine-tuned. As an example, we owned Salesforce and the CRM, so we managed that, and we were making changes all the time. Bug fix here, a little tweak there, and if some of those things maybe affect 1 or 2 people, when you scale it out to an organization like that, it might affect hundreds of people. So you really have to make sure that your tools and systems are really fine-tuned and ready for a lot of scale.
Yeah, I think that's an important part. Like, I used to, coming from an engineering background, building services at scale. I think one of the lenses that I've always had is this a double gate or a single gate issue? Single gate meaning that there is no coming back. Like, we screw it up, we host. We will not get another chance. Double gate is, okay, I mean, it's a screw up, great. We can always make it up. There'll be a bug fix, we can put it in, and we won't lose trust. And I think having that lens when you start thinking about scaling is super important. Like, every decision, is it a single gate or is it a double gate decision, right? Can I go, if it doesn't go well, can I go fix it? So that's super important. So as you're looking at a team, so like, we're going back to people, process, technology, right? So people first. What will be the things that you'll tell your team? First off, do you see everybody being able to transition successfully into the LexisNexis sales operations structure at scale? Or I think a better way to phrase that is, what will be the skill sets on your current team that you'll say, we need to build this muscle to now move into the LexisNexis scale environment?
Yeah, we had a lot of conversations about this. As we knew we were going to be moving into a larger organization, I knew some of the ways we operated as a team, just we wouldn't be able to operate the same way. Something I told my team is you really have to take every decision seriously and maybe slow your thinking down a little bit, because when you're a startup, when you're a smaller company, let's go. We're trying to grow. We're trying to scale. If we make mistakes along the way, it's not too big of a deal. The impact is minimized. But again, if you make a mistake, this now impacts a lot of people. It's not just 1 or 2 people you're gonna, ruin their day. So, really being a holistic thinker, being able to go investigate how a large organization like this works, being able to understand how all the processes are interconnected, and studying that, and then really taking the time to learn it, and then coming up with meaningful solutions that are holistic, not looking at, hey, I see a little fix here, so I'm going to create a solution for it. Oh, a sales rep here isn't incentivized to do this, so let's change the commission plan to do that. Well, that might, 90% of the sales force, maybe that's not applicable to. So it's just be very holistic in your thinking, slow down, and be very thoughtful. So we're not going for as much speed versus quality. So everything needs to be quality.
Quality. Are you have you begun to start thinking of what kind of capabilities you want to enhance or double down on at LexisNexis now to support the scale of ops, or is it more that I mean, it'll be good to understand like how do the sales teams culture of LexisNexis operate, right? I think you got about 1,200, 1,300 reps.
It's a very innovative company, very, very innovative. So they're moving, for a company the size as LexisNexis, moving very fast.
And how big is the ops team now over there?
Yeah, I think there's about over 60 people in sales ops.
Okay.
So it's a pretty good sized team.
Pretty big. And in that does not include the IT side, or does it includes IT?
No, that's dedicated sales ops. Looking at
sales ops.
Looking at enablement, looking at managing some technology, not from an IT perspective, but from a sales ops perspective. Yeah, there's a lot.
And so you got 60 people and dispersed globally right now.
Yes, a lot of the workforce is remote, so they're kind of all over the world. But yeah, they have dedicated teams for certain regions. It's a big organization, and I would say right now we're still in the learning phase. We're learning how things operate. We're learning where we fit into the overall organization. I think we bring a lot of skill sets that I think will be helpful. We spun up a pretty effective sales operations team in less than a year at Emailage. So and a lot of it too, since we were starting from scratch, everything that we have is new. We have newer tools. We have kind of the latest ideas and processes and structures. A lot of research on that.
So that's exactly what I was going with. Like LexisNexis has been around for a while, right? So now you come in with Emailage. Sales operations, in my experience in large companies that have been around for a while, the definition of what ops needed to do is slightly different from all the things that a young company like Emailage might do. So how are you going to handle the change management around, bringing the others to a newer point of view, new way of thinking, right? As well as the lens on investment, because it's not that they built a 1,200, 1,300 people company. They've been supporting ops. It's working. It's not that it was not working, right? The question there is like, what are the elements that you will say these can be changed? These are good practices to keep, and making the how would you suggest making the business case for change?
Well, step one is learning. So really understanding, it's a successful company. So how did they get there? What did they do to get to where they are today? They're a leader in the market in fraud, identity, and legal software technology. So learning that, and then being able to provide real, prudent, thoughtful advice on very specific areas where we can change for the better. And like I said, it's a pretty innovative group. They like hearing new ideas. They actually, when they talk to us, they were really excited for the people. They're like, it's great that we have a real great pool of talent here, and we can't wait to have you come in and help with the overall mission of the company. So I think at this point in time, it's just it's having a little bit of humility and trying to understand, why is this organization successful today? and then doing a real thoughtful gap analysis. Well, where are things not working too well? And then do we have some solutions that we built that can help there? And then just also being almost an advisor, consultant type of role with them, and giving their leadership ideas, saying, hey, this is something that we did. Let's keep these ideas on the table for how we can do things here. And I think that's what we can do right now.
So analyze, you're still going to be leading with a point of view, like you're doing to add value. The 60 people that you have now that it's moved. One question that I always have is ops, because I've seen different organizations handle this differently. So it's a two-part question. Is organizationally, is ops reporting to finance or sales? And ideally, where would you like to see it reporting, right? Some companies have ops reporting into finance. Some companies that have it reporting into sales. So that's the first part. And thoughts on that. Mm-hmm. The second part is, do you see sales strategy as part of the 60 people, or like how? If you could just sort of shed some light on like what kind of functions are these 60 people divided into?
Yeah. So I'll start with the first one. I think it definitely should report into sales. If you don't see yourself as a partner of sales and being on the same team, on the same, on the front lines, having the same goals, KPIs, then I think it's going to hinder your ability to create solutions that are designed to help sales. If you put your sales operations team reporting into finance, you almost become, and it's important, you need checks and balances in a company, but you almost become an adversary of sales. And you might be, you're thinking for the rest of the company, you're not an advocate for sales. So
is that because finance views sales as a cost center versus seeing sales ops as an investment in scaling sales? Is that how you think about it?
Every finance team is probably different in how they view it, but they're not on the team. They're not on the team, so it's not the same team. And I think that makes a real difference in how who are you interacting with day to day? Who are you shadowing? I mean, our ops team is shadowing people on sales calls. Our ops team is shadowing people how they're working with the CRM. It's a different mindset when you're part of the team. So rather than, hey, I'm helping, but I'm on the outside, I'm over here. It's different when you're on the same side. Now, I'm not saying finance and sales can't work well together. I think we worked really, really well with our finance team. I think they saw sales as an area of investment, absolutely. But I don't think we would have put as much critical thought into creating solutions to help salespeople if we were in a different department.
Okay. Fair enough. So now going back to the second part is like just like what kind of things are these 60 people doing, like in terms of like how much of it is, first off, it's a two-part question again there. How much of time is spent on keeping things as is, which is like maintenance mode, status quo, versus thinking of net new functionality, right? And then the part is like, okay, if you're doing status quo, like what are the kind of things that they're doing?
Yeah, it's a great balance. There's forward thinking. There's also, you got to keep the status quo. You got to keep, you got to keep the lights on in a business, and that's really important. So, different activities as you typically find in any sales ops team. You have enablement, you have a variation of a deal desk, you have forecasting and analytics, you have commission and incentives. So you have people dedicated to, one, administering the commission plan, but two, creating a plan that drives the right behaviors and incentives, and constantly trying to fine tune that to make sure that people get rewarded for what you actually want them to do. So it's all that it's. It was actually very similar to how our team was structured. It wasn't too different. It's just bigger.
Scale is different. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
now maybe.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, maybe since we created everything from scratch, we had maybe a little bit more technology to make things. We didn't have to have as big of a sales ops team because we could leverage technology. But But that comes from starting from scratch now, not rather than needing to change lots and lots of processes. Change management for a big company is difficult.
That's huge. So that actually leads me right into the other question, which is great, which is technology. Like, how do you now at scale evaluate technology and technology partnerships? Are you looking for systems that way you will be willing to update your business processes, or are you looking for processes technologies that will kind of fit into your existing business process?
I'd say it depends. I think there are areas where we look at these two things in isolation. Is our process working well? Are we following best practice in a process? If not, then we need to fix the process first. If we have if we have a process that we believe is functioning well, then we want to take technology to accelerate the process. I think that's another lesson learned. This wasn't necessarily when I was in sales ops, but maybe before. We would get technology as a solution to the problem without identifying what the process is first. That technology is not always the answer. You need to have a solid process, and then that technology will accelerate it 10 times. So technology is imperative. But if you go in and your process is broken, your data is not clean, there's very little technology can help with.
Yeah, that's actually spot on. I was talking to another customer of ours, large company, 800 salespeople, and we were looking at data, right? And for segmentation and everything, we need data. And their marketing team was like, we just need to go buy more data. I'm like, yeah, you can actually go buy more data source or buy a tool that'll help you clean data, but you've not really invested in the process for what it takes to who can create an account. Simple thing, it doesn't, because account data was bad in this case, and so because you don't have the clear fidelity in accounts, you don't know how to segment, right? Really how many accounts you actually have, and buying a tool that'll fill your account information, employee number, doesn't really help, because you have accounts that are not being spelt the right way. You have accounts that are being used. People are putting acronyms, right? And so no data source can fix that issue till you don't go fix that process piece first of how you get an account, who gets to create an account, what's the definition of an account, right? And defining those rules up front, because you'll find the same fail rate on the new technology. So that's super important, is to identify the process. So as you think of technology, as you think of adoption, what is the partnership now looking at scale between you and IT?
It's very collaborative.
Okay. Does IT lead with a point of view, or is it that IT is like, and I'll share my context, right? So when we were at Salesforce, our IT team was like, okay, I have a Scrum team. They will do what you tell us to do. And they were like largely caught up in just break fix management, right? And one of the challenges our CIO used to always come to us is saying, how do I'm really struggling to figure out how do I add value to sales, right? We're doing a lot of stuff, but I don't know I'm adding value. What would be your recommendation to, say, a CIO or a IT side of the house to say, this is how you can actually help us?
That's a great question. And I think one, making sure things work is important. So making sure that's taken care of. It's tough for them because they're not the functional experts. So for an IT group to recommend certain tools or technologies that is designed for a functional purpose, I think is really difficult. Now, I think making sure enterprise-wide technologies, make sure your business is using best in class there, because that's something that can impact everyone. But I would say lean on your functional leadership for what tools to evaluate, because it's tough. Just as an example, if I am great at being able to evaluate tools for the purpose of sales, customer success, and marketing. If I had to evaluate a tool for finance or HR or IT, I would not do very well because it's not my area of expertise. So I think tools are becoming so specialized that, we have somebody who can manage all of the sales tools. At Email on our sales ops team, we had somebody dedicated who could manage all of our tools. He was the admin for all of our tools. And that worked better than having IT manage it. So I would say if you can, have some functional technical expertise that lives within the sales ops function.
So what do you think of tools fatigue? Is that real? Because that's one thing I keep hearing from sales ops people is we got way too many tools, and they're generally point tools, right? And just keeping the integration between those tools is becoming a full-time job.
I think it can be a real issue. I really think it can. I'm guilty of bringing on too many tools myself. And then you have to evaluate that and think, is this really accelerating, or is this adding more work for us to do and the sales team to do? So I think it's real. I think if you don't have a thoughtful approach, and again, it starts from your process first. What is your process, and what do we need in order to accelerate that? You might be able to manage most of your process through a CRM. Maybe you don't really need anything that's ancillary to the main system to accelerate. But often it's not the case. Often you need more. But which ones do you really need? There's millions of tools. You can go crazy buying tools, and if it's not really accelerating something that you need accelerated, then don't bring it on. I think it's real. I don't think it has to be. I think if you're thoughtful in developing your process first, I think you can design an effective tech stack that is lean for your company.
Excellent. So the last question, and it goes back to leading with the point of view part. How much? And you've seen both Email Age, LexisNexis, and you talk to a lot of ops leaders as well. How much time do you really think ops teams are spending on leading with the point of view versus reacting to things that are happening in the sales teams?
They're not leading.
And how would you shift that focus, right?
They're not leading with the point of view enough. I don't think, and it's hard. It's hard because a lot of work is put onto an operations team, a lot. So I think you have to, especially if you're a sales ops leader, you have to be able to delegate your work to your team. Your team has to be able to handle keep the lights on work and make sure everything runs smoothly. And then you have to make sure they're able to flex their strategic muscles as well. Yeah. I think, in order to transition to it, I think you have to focus on, I always map my priorities on I wish I could draw on here, but it's urgent and important.
Yeah.
And if it's urgent, but it's not important, don't focus on it. What people always ignore, urgent and important, everyone's always good at doing that. It's really hard to do the important things that aren't urgent right now. And you have to be really diligent in focusing there. And then don't get lost in the trap of high urgency but low importance. So that's my recommendation. Map out everything that you have to do. Yeah. Their initiatives. There's, hey, we need to fix lead routing. Hey, we need to fix our territories. But I gotta get all these quotes through, and I gotta, the CRM's broken over here. I gotta fix this right now. Well, you have to focus on the stuff that's important, even if it's not urgent, even if nobody's asking you to do it right now. You have to proactively do it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to look at it, urgent and important. One last question on this one is, when we were starting to build this platform for planning, right? So we can sort of say build territories, build rep management, right? Automate a lot of the things. And our lens was we want to take away a lot of manual work that ops people do. One of the VCs that we were talking to made a comment saying that most sales leaders don't give a shit about an ops person's quality of life. So I'm not sure why they would invest in automating. Why would they care about automating? They're looking at, I don't really care. Just do it, right?
Yep.
What would be your response to that, like Lens, right? Or because I think a lot of ops people do struggle with that. Is like, shit, I'm going to get butted with the work, and nobody cares about my quality of life.
You have to be able to prove that you can be a team that's leading with a point of view, and you can be a team that's bringing something to the table, and that you're a strategic partner for the leadership team of your organization. And then they may begin to build some empathy for your team of how much manual work they're doing. So if you can, if you can take some of that manual work away from some of your team so they can be dedicated to evaluating better tools and technologies to accelerate your sales process, then that makes sense. But if you're not leading with a point of view, if you, it's up to the sales ops team to create value and fight for that position in the company. If you position your team as the team where I'm just the task dump, then that's what you'll be.
Yeah, no, I think that's super important, that lens to have, that how do I make sure people are seeing the value in my team? Because that was our challenge when we were at Salesforce, right? It was hard to keep people more than 18 months. I'll have this MBA analyst out of school doing a lot of sales strategy work, gets burnt out in 18 months. And then he says, I want to make money, so I'll rather go into sales. I don't want to be in ops anymore. Right? And so we have this constant revolving door of, churning young kids out. Every time that happens, you actually lose institutional knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and it is hard to build now. So I think that is really good. It's a little couple of minutes over time, but I really wanted to thank you for sharing this. And like I said, we will be partnering. I look forward to partnering with you on everything moving
thank you.
forward.
Yeah, appreciate the time. Appreciate it. Thank you.